Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching 101 podcast. I'm Daniel Chamberlain. I'm here with Kenny Simpson of Northeast Arkansas Persuasion, one of the legends in Arkansas. Been doing it for... Did you hit your 20 years yet, Coach?
I don't know if in Arkansas. I coached 8 years in Alabama before, so I'm 20 total, but I've split my years. Awesome.
Tonight we are joined by the Union Redhawks quarterback coach, Coach Dub Maddox. Coach, I would screw up any introduction I could do for you, so I would never sell it good enough. So how about you just introduce yourself, kind of tell us about your journey, your coaching journey, and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I appreciate you guys having me on. I started coaching in the year 2000 and was hired on as receivers coach at Broken Arrow High School, largest high school in Oklahoma, and coached there for 4 years, and then had a stint in Florida that opened up a new high school down in Southwest Florida and coached receivers and did special teams down there, and then got called back to come back to Oklahoma and stayed there for 13 years at Jenks High School, powerhouse there, and was in a good situation. Coached quarterbacks and was offensive coordinator there for a number of years, won a lot of state championships, and then our head coach got diagnosed with ALS and retired, and took a head coaching job at a small private Christian school for 2 years, and then got lured back into 6A1. Just kind of missed the bright lights and the pressure packed situation of the high level football there in 6A1, and got lured over by our arch rival Union. When I was at Jenks, which is kind of crazy. So it's like going from, OSU to OU or OU to Texas. And so got offered a great setup with Coach Frederick there, Hall of Fame coach, and been there for the last 4 seasons, and just enjoying learning and growing and coaching football.
And he's not going to say it, Daniel, but he was, I think, one of the pioneers in putting coaching materials out. So I'll say it for you, Coach. I've got his books. They're unbelievable. If you guys, whether you throw the ball or don't, I think the way Coach sees the game is really, really cool. It's some of the first books I bought. I'm excited to hear him talk about, offensive stuff and QB stuff, but really, really good materials. Coach, I know you have some. They go on Amazon, or where do they go get your books?
Yeah, so I have a website, r4footballsystem.com. R4 is a system that I developed a number of years ago. It started back in 2006 with a partner of mine, Darren Slack. I was heavy into running quarterback camps with him for 14, 15 years before COVID hit. COVID kind of put a clamp down on the camp business, and then the market's been kind of saturated with quarterback trainers and whatnot. So kind of shifted in the last 3 or 4 years and having young kids not want to travel as much, but Darren was a mentor of mine, kind of taught me the ropes. He's a brilliant innovator, and we had a lot of like mindsets on how we see things and see the game. And so we developed that system, and it's grown extensively over the years, which started out kind of a passing progression system, decision-making system for quarterbacks, is now we use it for game planning, play calling, and run game and everything offensively. So
really good stuff, Coach. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I was introduced to the R4 system. I started my coaching journey just a few years ago up at Wyandotte, and Dylan Terry is a consumer of your things. So he, I didn't realize he was using it then because I was too new and just trying to learn football. But we've had some conversation about it. And he loves it. And that's a college guy. He played D2 quarterback and still came out and was like, "This is better than what I was getting along the way." So. No matter what level you've played at before, it seems like it's at least a supplementary package to whatever you're trying to do as a coach.
Well, I think it provides a good framework to basically distill information. There's just massive amounts of information you got to drill down for a young quarterback and even your coaches too that coach other positions. So I think that's the benefit of it, is it's not an offense, it's an operating system, and that's why we created it.
That's awesome. Well, that's great stuff, Coach, man. We're really glad to have you on. I got introduced to those 6A1 bright lights this year up at Owasso, and
yeah,
you're right, man. There's something to it. Even thinking back over the years at smaller schools, the Friday nights just aren't the same. I mean, that's that's big. My wife laughs because this was, she's been to all the little stadiums I've been around and coaching at, and she was like, this is college football. This is not high school. So there's a lot to it there. So I can see why you would get drawn back in time and time again. Really, I mean, once you get that bug, I'm sure it's hard to step down to a smaller level. But so, man, we're really glad to have you, Coach Simpson. Before we move on here, why don't you tell us how to simplify football for our staff and our players?
Coach, do you want to communicate like a pro and experience the best sideline communication system on the market? Then let me introduce you to Procom headsets. Procom is the most clear, durable, and reliable system on the market. From our noise-canceling technology to our coach-to-player communications featuring our patented loudmouth, Procom defeats the competition. Thousands of coaches have made the switch because they have seen, heard, and felt the difference. Let me show you how Procom headsets will make your game day communications a seamless and efficient process. Go to procomwelchman.com and reach out to me. That's PROCOMWELCHMAN.com.
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors FBCoachSimpson.com for all your coaching needs, with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials, and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors OffensiveCoordinatorAcademy.com, all things offense, and DefensiveCoordinatorAcademy.com, all things defense.
This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At AthleticSpeedMovement.com, we've taken Del Basquet's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to AthleticSpeedMovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, AthleticSpeedMovement.com. All right, man, that's good stuff. Question 1 here, we'll just jump right in, and Coach Maddox, we'll let you start us off. What does a basic install look like for you? I know, we're all kind of we're a couple months away probably from spring ball, but what does your install look like as you start each season?
Yeah, you look at it off, the whole offense, or are you just talking passing game at this point?
I do passing game. Let's keep it passing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, our passing game, we have our base concepts that we install, and our install kind of stays consistent every year. But, every offseason, we're always looking ways to refine and improve. So, January and February, a lot of times we'll look at other people's film and really take deep dives into all 22 and kind of see is there things that we can do better? Is there things that we're missing? How can we refine our teaching? And so when we come out of February, we may add some new things that we'll experiment with in the spring and in summer 7-on-7. But the other the issue that we run into is our talent level changes every year in high school. So, we've got to kind of look at, what do we have coming back? What are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and do we need to kind of go a different direction? Do we need more drop back game, more heavy play action, 12 personnel, or do we have enough talent this year we can go 10? Do we want to be more air raid based? So that kind of is, the thing that we'll talk through as a staff. In terms of core concepts, we're always going to kind of have, 3 different categories. We're going to be, obviously look at our quick game, our RPO, and then our intermediate drop back play action game. And so for me, I'm big on bootleg concepts. I think bootleg is the best concept in football. You have the fake element, the flow of the run play, and you're flooding a side of the field, and then you got the quarterback run threat. So again, we're always going to utilize and install our base boot rules and then have different tags and adjustments off that to handle certain edge pressures and movement. So again, I'm huge in the bootleg concept. Obviously we're going to start that in spring ball day 1. Obviously, we're going to install base power pass. I mean, these are just the elementary plays you got to know in football. I mean, it's power pass and boot. Then we're going to get into, some of our drop back game. Obviously, with the, evolution of RPOs the last, 10, 12 years, RPO has kind of taken over a lot of guys' quick game. I still have both. I think it's important to have, both. And we can go in deeper later that if you want to. But we do have quick game tags off our RPOs, but I think it's important to have a quick game package, in those third mediums to move the chains. And so I'm a big with stick concepts. I love stick. high percentage, and especially have a good tight end, just can work those windows. And then the tags off of that are really, really effective. So I really love stick. Um, snag or is kind of used less. I used to be a big snag guy, but snag has kind of become less for me because I just don't see a lot of man as much. Now, if we're seeing man teams, I really love snag. I think it's more tailored to snag, and you can make it fit in zone. But I think you kind of decide, hey, we're gonna, then you got to pick one or the other to at least major in. So you major one, minor the other. So that's how I look at quick game. And then intermediate, that's really based on can your offensive line protect? I mean, you got to look, how much time can you give your quarterback? Can you give him a 3-second timeline? If your offensive line can't provide a 3-second timeline, I'm not going to be sitting back and running a lot of intermediate air raid concepts unless my quarterback's, really, really mobile and can get himself out of bad situations. So, if we have a decent offensive line and some good skill guys that can push the field, then, we'll major in more intermediate. And the ones I major in are based on kind of what coverages do I have to beat. So I think it's important to look at who's the top 2 or 3 teams that you have to beat. Who's the top 2 teams in your district you got to beat, or who's, the top 3 teams in your classification got to beat. What do they run? Are they cover 3 based? You're going to see all the different 3 rotations and 3 cloud, 3 buzz, 3 strong, 3 weak. If that's the case, then man, we better have a lot of good 3 beaters, whether it be, flood concepts, four-man floods, vertical switches, whatever the case may be, or is it going to be a lot of pattern matching, quarters? I think you got to look at those teams you got to beat and then decide, okay, what concepts are we going to call that we need to use to beat those guys? So that's kind of how I look at my intermediate game every year. I just don't have hey, we're going to go 4 verticals day one. It's, I'm not going to run a lot of 4 verticals that particular year if I'm not seeing a lot of cover 3 style teams. And so I think you got to kind of analyze it from that perspective. So a lot of factors will fall, will dictate kind of what we're going to install intermediate wise. And I think you got to look at arm talent, your quarterback, the skill of your receivers, your offensive line, and then what are teams running that you need to beat, and then you go from there. So again, long-winded answer. I'm big into play action and drop back. Love play action. Love going under center. I'm kind of different in that. A lot of guys, I love getting under center and getting downhill runs and then taking some shots. So again, we do a lot of NFL style play actions that you'll see there. Probably watching right now tonight by the 49ers. So I love the Shanahan tree. So anyway, that's.
No, I appreciate that somebody at our level is keeping that alive, because it does seem like 80% of teams out there, it's the gun or nothing. And I think it was Kenny and I talked about before, like people can't get under center anymore. And it's like you just need whatever it is you're needing to do. Take a kneel. We freshman ball side, we faced a situation. We were on like the 2-yard line this year. We just needed to kneel to get to halftime. But we're in the gun. We're 5 yards behind the line. We're in the end zone. So we just kind of had to obviously just run it out, boot it out, and get rid of the ball. But it's a lost talent. So I appreciate seeing guys that are keeping it going.
Yeah, Coach. A lot of good stuff there. And I do want to get back to RPOs and quicks, Daniel. So I took a note on that. Make a note. I'd like to hit that with Coach while we got him on here, because I think there's some different opinions on that. I'd like to hear Coach's. But what I'd say is, we try to go in basically similar to Coach. I think we look at play action. I look at drop back as the same, because for us, I'm more of an RPO guy for quicks, mainly because we just don't throw the ball enough to do both. That's why I want to hear what Coach kind of has to say about that. But then we do rollout, and then we have screens. And generally screens aren't something you really got to spend a ton of time on. We usually will do that during run game install, so I'm going to leave that out. But we'll come in with 4 to 5 concepts, and my goal is to narrow it down to 2 to 3. I don't like carrying a ton of concepts, but I do need to see what our kid's good at. And with all the 7-on-7s and the spring ball, you're going to have a pretty good idea, like Coach mentioned, what your quarterback's arm talent is. Can you protect him? Can you run these routes well? We've really struggled hitting corner routes. I don't know if I don't coach it well, we don't throw it well. I don't know what it is. So for us, we've not run snag in 3-4 years, but we're going to break it out again this spring and see if I can coach it better, or we can be better at it, because that's kind of one of those concepts that I like to run. So we're going to run in with about 4 to 5 concepts in what I'd call the drop back game is going to be the biggest change. Like that's the one year to year, if you watch us, where we may major in this concept this year. The next year it's this concept. We were big in choice this year because that's what we had. With that quarterback, he was pretty confident with that. We had a really good slot, so we could run a lot of the switches and let him read leverage, and that was our best pass play. This year it may be completely different. It may be stick concept. We have a good tight end. It might be what we throw the most. But we're going to try to go in with 4 to 5 and go down to 2 to 3, and then I'm huge on tags. I think that's the way you make your passing game exotic or flavorful or whatever you want to say. And the coach is speaking my language there with play action. I'm in the gun, but we're wing T based. So waggle, or like Coach said, was boot. And then power pass, we'd run that off a buck look. But same idea. I think that a lot of times as coaches, we need to run that stuff more. Every single year we look back at our stats and we say we should have run more play action. We should have run more play action. We should have run more play action. And I still don't do it. I don't know why. So I'm hoping this year to keep reminding myself to do that. We have some staples in our offense that aren't going to change. Coach kind of alluded to that. Like we have our play actions, the base is probably not going to change, but we may flavor up. But our drop back game will change the most. Then I want to throw it back to Coach on RPOs versus quicks. We don't run quicks because we only run RPOs, but I have a way to kill the run and take the throw, or the opposite. So really, I don't know if I'm really running RPO and quicks, if I'm killing it and checking to one or checking to the other. So I'm kind of curious, what your thoughts are on that.
I love RPOs. We do a ton of it. I think you get in some of those third down situations, and you obviously are not going to run the football, or maybe you don't think you can get it. And then I like the way we structure our quick game. We're able to still get a full field read on it, and so we don't have to be, we don't mirror quick game routes. The way our our quick game structured is, we'll have, quick game concepts to both sides. But when you can teach your quarterback how to manipulate his drop and how to delete a side based on certain rotations, or maybe the mic's pushing, you can find better space. And so I think just the way that we structure our quick game, we can still get a full field read. We can accelerate our footwork to still get to the backside and hit those other routes on time. And so it gets the ball out quick enough where your line doesn't put a lot of stress on your offensive line. So I think that's why I like quick game. I like it also, obviously in the red zone, in those tight areas when your your vertical space is reduced. So again, that's why I think that there's still an element for it. We're seeing so much teams do a good job of really taking the RPO, conflict player out of the mix, slinging the fits, and then taking those indicators away and really clouding up those sides. And so I think when you see that, it kind of basically brings all the circle of life back to the need for your drop back or your quick game. And so I think as defenses get more savvy and more creative at taking those elements away, there's going to be a bigger need to have that.
Yeah, I'd agree. And the guys that are listening to this, we run a very unique offense. Gun T and shotgun wing T. We're not going to see the exotic looks Coach is probably going to see, because when he gets back there, it's probably 2x2, or it's more of a traditional-ish, maybe spread with a tight end or 20 or whatever it's going to be. I think if you're in that world, if you're listening to this and you're in that world, I do think there's a huge place for quick game. I think if you're a team that you're going to run the ball 85% of the time, probably you need to pick one or the other, would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think, Daniel could probably speak to some of this too. In our league, the defensive coordinators, they're doing stuff you're seeing on Saturdays and Sundays, and then you're going to see some exotic teams that are working these psycho type fronts, and there's 5 guys across, and you have no idea what coverage you're going to see post snap. There's all kinds of movement action and stuff, so it really makes the RPOs. It can be a challenge on some of those when you're seeing that. And we're a pro style offense. We do 12 personnel, 10, 11. We'll do it all, and I think it's just I'm not sold out to spread and 10, but I think with the level of defensive guys that we face, it's important to have a pretty good toolbox. And I think, quick game handles some of that against those exotic types of coverages.
Absolutely. And we'll jump into our second question. We don't want to go too long here. How do you, and I realize you sell a system, so it's your system is the answer. So you don't have to give away all the goodies that you're trying to sell to folks, but how do you teach your quarterback? So what is kind of those base concepts, or like you get a raw guy, maybe it's a freshman, you're just trying to get him ready, because I assume your junior guy is probably pretty good already. So just what is it you're doing to teach that quarterback to read the field? You talked about deleting a side, a few of those things.
Yeah.
So how do you really help them multiply that passing game?
Yeah, there's that's a lot to unpack there. I think just to keep it 30,000 foot level. When we got our young kids coming in, our freshmen and even sophomores, and even for my veterans that are coming back, we always have a quarterback school that starts in January. We meet 2 times a week, and that'll go all the way till spring ball. And so the curriculum's pretty tight, and so we've been doing it quite a number of years. But I always start back, and the first month and a half is just spent solely on recognizing defenses, fronts, coverages, blitzes, understanding and becoming an expert at reading defenses. And I think you got to teach it from like a defensive coordinator perspective. So we're teaching it like they're the safety, like they were a secondary corner. After that, we kind of switch in more of the quarterback mindset, and I think the next thing you need to teach them is understanding basically the non-negotiables of football. It's space, time, and talent, and so they've got to understand how to process open space, and really that's where we get into anticipation. So we get into deeper layers. Obviously we're teaching coverage and weakness. So obviously cover 3, the weaknesses of seams, cover 4, it's a flats, 2, middle, and hole. We're teaching those basic things, but then we got to go a layer deeper to how do we process the anticipation of those openings, because just because you're seeing cover 2 and you got to dig right in the middle doesn't mean it's going to necessarily be open. I mean, there's other factors that be in play. Linebackers can wall, you can have Tampa too, and so we're teaching a language of open, and I've written a book on it called Capology that goes. It puts a language to different hip angles, cushion levels, collision. I mean, we're trying to identify a deeper layer of non-negotiables of what they're able to see. And then with the development of the VR that we use, we're able to code those things in the headset and give them a lot of reps in the off season on how to basically subconsciously accelerate their anticipation of open space. I mean, they got to know we call it capped, a capped route is versus an uncapped route. And it's this space, and we got to predict that before it happens. So we spend a lot of time in that. The next thing is the footwork element, the time. I mean, it's space, time, and then the talent, or the three things you've got to be able to teach. So they got to understand their footwork, their drop is their clock. And they've got to understand how to match their drops with route breaks and their eyes with route breaks, and really match their footwork with the style of concept you're calling. I mean, if you're working a shot post, a read post, and then a deep 20-yard overdrag, they've got to understand. Well, that requires 7-step drop timing. I mean, I got to provide enough time for these routes to develop, and so I think that's the beauty of R4 is it establishes routes and breaks them down into families, and they're able to see how certain routes have. I mean, routes have DNA. Routes have properties within them, just like we have DNA in our bodies that make our hair a certain color, eyes are a certain color, whatever. Routes have certain space and time requirements that allow them to be open in a specific point in time. And when you can understand the family that those fit in, and the types of footwork that time up with those, you can look at any playbook, NFL playbook all the way down, and you can be able to basically connect when you should be looking at what route based on the DNA of that route. So they don't have to memorize progressions anymore. They can know what the best progression should be based on when the route's breaking open. And so that's really the impetus for R4 is there's rhythm families of routes, there's read routes, and there's rush routes, and then there's the release element. And there's a progression to everything in football, and you have to teach within a progression of how those non-negotiables happen. No matter if you're talking run game, there's a rhythm element of run blocks. And there's run blocks that are rhythm based. There's read run blocks. There's rush run blocks, and run blocks have parts of those have properties, and you can't work around those. I mean, there's you pull a guard or a tackle and you run a GT counter. I mean, we classify those as read blocks. Those take a certain amount of time to develop, so you can't work around that. So again, a lot of stuff to unpack there, but I think you gotta make sure your quarterback knows defenses, knows the weaknesses of those, and then you got to go a layer deeper on how to teach anticipation, and then you've got to teach them, okay, how does my footwork, match up with routes and route breaks, and then you got to go out and practice it and put it all together. So a lot of our time in the offseason is spent on those three things, and then a lot of classroom, and then we get on the field when it warms up and try to put it all together.
So listen to anybody talk at a PhD level about routes is just, that makes every real football guy smile. So I appreciate that you have put the time and energy into, you created that language, right? You talked about making it a language and speaking that language, and that's amazing. Real quick before Kenny puts, people are going to be asking what all those words mean and what are those routes. What's the book that I can go find all of that in?
Yeah, so it's a book called Headset to Helmet. That was the first book that we released, and it really gives you the framework for the R4 system. And if you understand that framework, you can apply it to basically everything in football. And that's where we get into the families of routes and the footwork and how to time it all together. We just revamped that book. That book's been out of print for 7 years, and it's being released in 2 weeks. Redid the cover and reformatted the book. So excited to get that out. So that's Headset to Helmet.
Awesome. I've heard those words, and I don't even remember what they all mean. So I think it's in the cart if I didn't actually buy it earlier. I'm not sure because I saw your Twitter that you were re-releasing it, but it will go on the shelf because as a non-quarterback ever in my entire life, it's nice to be able to have somebody that can tell you the right way to teach a quarterback. So
I appreciate it.
Kenny, I know you were about to
give
us your
it's hard to follow Coach. He's very, very good at what he does, and because I have that book, I mean, we don't run everything that Dub does, but I think that the way he has trained quarterbacks is consistently good. And so you look at different things he mentioned. I'm just going to kind of highlight what he said and what we agree with. A common language, whatever your language is, I think you need to come up with it. If you don't feel qualified to do that, go buy Dub's book. He's already done it for you. It's good stuff. But I think you need to have a language when you speak to your quarterback. He knows what you're saying. I think a lot of times we talk to quarterbacks about cover 2, cover 4, cover whatever it might be. And if we haven't taught them all of that, they don't know what that means. And then we get mad at them for not really understanding why that wasn't open. And so I think you got to create a common language first. Second thing, Coach kind of hit on it, and every offense probably has their own. We have like golden rules of playing quarterback. These are kind of the things we want to make sure, our offense we do. Coach mentioned a few of those. Depending on what you run, guys, you may be in here doing triple option. I think his stuff still applies. Probably the golden rules of triple option are don't turn the ball over, learn how to make the reads. And so there are certain rules you want your quarterback to kind of understand on, not to take a sack on 4th down, not to put the ball in risk on 1st down. There are certain kind of inevitable truths that you might need to come up with to teach them, because while I've got the playoff game going on over here on the side, and I'm sure Coach does, your kid does not. So you need to make sure that they're learning whatever your golden must-have rules are. My kids are all 3-sport kids. We tend to pick our best athlete at quarterback, so I don't get them in January. I usually get them sometime in April. So I can't do as much as Dub can do, but we can still do some things. And he mentioned this. He's got a VR system out with reps. We just put one out as well. I think that's the new way of teaching quarterbacks. I can take a kid in the middle of basketball season, throw a VR on him. He can go through a lot of our reads, go through our progressions. I know we've got that in the gun tee available over at Reps. I know Dub has one as well. There's a lot of good ones out there. You could obviously do your own one as well. For us, training the quarterback's a little different than him because, again, we're going to run the ball 75 to 80% of the time. And so our passing game needs to – and our quarterback's involved a lot with that, with the RPO game, with shifts, trades, all that kind of stuff. So he's got to be involved in all of that stuff. So for us, we try to really focus on who are conflict players and where do I want his eyes going on whatever play it might be. Okay, if we were going to be more exotic in the passing game, we'd have to probably go a lot more in depth than that. But I know that stuff. Can I get my quarterback's eyes in the correct place? And then we spend a lot of time talking about what type of ball are we expecting on this. And Coach does that when he talks about capped or uncapped. I think I've got this right, so Coach, correct me if I'm wrong on this. But basically, a capped defender you're not going to get over top of, and uncapped, there's space to throw the deep ball. And I know there's probably a lot more to it. But when we talk to our quarterbacks, that's kind of what we're looking at. What kind of ball are we throwing here? We get a lot of man. We get more man because we run. You're going to come in a box to stop us from running buck sweep. So we see more man probably than a lot of other teams do. So what kind of ball does that need to look like on a post? Well, that's a zero ball. There's zero help in the middle of the ball. Give it some air, let him go get it. Versus, hey, we're going to run the flood route and we're going to try to hit this 15 back to 14-yard out. That ball needs to come out this direction. And so I'm sure that'll translate back to footwork and all of that kind of stuff. So to me, those are the things I got out of Coach's books and a lot of what he's taught and really what he talked about tonight. Create a common language, have common rules, have whatever your training ability is going to be with that kid. Whether that's, and I think VR is the new way. I'm kind of jumping aboard that train because I think it's a very safe, healthy way to train the mind of kids. They like it anyway. So it's kind of like a game for them, and that's how they learn. And then I think it's figuring out what your playbook looks like. Is that going to be, we're going to read capped and uncapped, we're going to read space, we're going to read coverages, we're going to give you some options, or are you going to run a more simplified offense? Nothing wrong with that. Where you're going to read a defensive player on each of these plays. So I think making those choices, whatever offense you run, you got to be able to speak to your quarterback and make sure that what you're trying to convey is coming across to them.
That's awesome. And it's good to see two different systems that are both very successful. Obviously, Union football has been great, super successful here in Northeast Oklahoma, well, in the state of Oklahoma. And Coach Southside over there is doing it with the Gun T, had their best season ever this year. So you can be great at either one, right? I like the major and minor, right? You can major in either one of these philosophies, and you can go in and make an NFL caliber quarterback, or you can go in and make, we're watching some NFL games today, and we watched, Baltimore Ravens have an NFL quarterback, but he feels to me like something Kenny Simpson would produce, right? He's able to pull the ball and run, and it feels, I don't know, just different. So it's a different style, but it's good to see that you can be successful with either one of those. We'll jump here into the last question. How are you teaching route adjustments? And obviously, we know there's different skill levels of quarterbacks. Who can do it? The coach can do it. But when you progress through your season, you talked about kind of your routes can get different. So, Coach Maddox, how are you putting those in?
So, route adjustments for us. I'm very cautious of giving my guys freedom to adjust routes post snap. That's something they've got to earn the right, and really it takes several years for a quarterback and receiver to develop that relationship to see and understand space the same way. I think it's valuable, obviously, if you get that, and I've had that before. I think the R4 language can help accelerate the ability to understand route conversions. I don't like post-snap route conversions where you give the guy the ability to run a route in a different direction. Like, let's say, you got a corner called, and post-snap, the safety's over and outside, and, okay, we're going to let you break it on a post. We're not going to do that. But I think, like, you got a corner called and safety's over and outside, you can snap that corner flatter. I think, there are certain routes will allow them to, break it more horizontally as opposed to vertically. And the same for like a post. A lot of times you'll throw that post and that corner might be playing divider technique, or if he's running the post from a slot position, the safety's over and inside. You can snap that prospect flatter, and it turns into more like a speed dig. I think, you can teach your kids, and I've had a lot of success over the years to teaching kids the ability to adjust, a more vertical break, more flatter to win route side space back. But you got to make sure you're throwing on time, throwing on rhythm, what we call it. So that's some things we'll get into with corners and post. We'll allow them to adjust those route breaks more horizontally versus, certain cap type positions. And then, most of my other route breaks are given pre-snap with hand signals, and so we're heavy into that. And then, if I got a really good quarterback that's seasoned in it, I leave it on him to do it, but I kind of drive that from the sideline with him. So, I think that's the two ways. You can manipulate it pre-snap with signals and whatnot based on certain things you're seeing, and then I think you can take it a deeper level and get some post-snap break, but it's more on those certain types of routes. You might allow your quarterback that's running a seam. If that safety's, quarter safety's over the top, he can settle it to more of a curl or settle down in the hole type deal. So I think I love it. You just got to make sure you have two guys that are really on the same page with that. I think the R4 process and language really helps of getting both guys unified and seeing, perceiving space the same. And the frames of reference we use to communicate when he should break a route or how he should break it. But really, that's the main things we'll look at with route adjustments.
Yeah, good stuff, Coach. You being a quarterback guy, I kind of thought that might be your answer. I know you coach them all, but I think live with a quarterback, and y'all are so quarterback. You do such a good job with the quarterbacks. I'd be hesitant in letting them make a lot of route adjustments too. You put a lot of time, and you're killing routes by what he sees. We do a couple of different things, Daniel, in that world. So we do some tags, which is what Coach kind of mentioned there. That's not really a route adjustment, but that's something where we don't let the kid decide that. That's not something he would decide, but we can signal in and adjust off a certain route. And then we have specific routes that we do give them a little bit of freedom. So we have a route that's called a vertical release or VR, which we run a lot in our choice game, where we're going to try to blow by a guy, and we just tell our guy if we can touch him, then keep running because it's a go route. If you can't touch him, then we're going to give you the option there to settle it. And so that's one route that we give a little bit of freedom on it. I'm with Coach. I don't like to give a ton more. We give a few on curls if we're curling into a zone or that's more of a route adjust, I'd almost think, where I can curl into a window and I know I can continue that if there's not a space there, or I can work back to space, but I'm facing the quarterback. That's typically not a ball that's thrown super early anyway. And so I can kind of work to space on that. And then we're probably similar to what Coach mentioned there. We have certain routes that will give them a little bit of freedom. So like we run what we call win routes. If we get zero coverage or we're working on a safety, whatever that might be, where his only job is to beat the defender inside because there's nobody deep. We're uncapped. We're trying to throw that kind of home run ball. So that route can look different. Basically, we've got to stack the guy to get inside of him. Then we're going to try to work to space. And then we have corner routes, probably similar. That's probably what we suck at them because I don't teach it real well. I need Dub to come teach my guys. But we try to teach our guys. We're running a corner route, and when you break to go, if the safety is over top of you, you can kind of bend it flatter, more like a deep out, and put that ball in that spot. Or if I've climbed up on top of that safety, now I'm going to go ahead and take that thing to the back pylon. That's kind of my angle, and the quarterback will throw me open. Again, we suck at that. So if you're taking notes, that might not be one that you want to go with. But I'm a big fan of, like, on any vertical route, if you are uncovered, kind of giving options of what's there and what's not there.
That's awesome. I have zeroed input on any of these because I'm a defensive guy. So I'm stealing everything I can from you guys right now. That's the beauty of doing podcasts, right? Is I get to talk to all the offensive minds, but I don't really have a lot of those right now. So, we'll go ahead and close out. I know we probably haven't quite hit an hour yet, but the football game's on. It's playoff Sunday. So, Coach Simpson, why don't you tell us what our lesson is today?
You have no secrets. I'm not telling you what's on, but the play of the year just happened. So make sure you watch it after you put your kid to bed.
Don't tell me.
I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, no.
Don't tell him, Daniel. He didn't want to know.
All right. It's a good one.
All right. Looking forward.
Coach Simpson, why don't you tell us what not to do as a coach?
Oh, yeah. I forgot I had this one on here. And this is my opinion. I think there are guys that can do certain things, but I think a lot of times as a coach, we think that more is better. We think that more is better as far as having 17 different concepts, and we got 15 drop backs, and we have this and that and whatever else it is. I think really good offensive coordinators, and Coach even kind of mentioned it, you might start with a lot, but I think you try to find what fits your kids and then run those as your bread and butter concepts and just have slight tags off of it. I think as you watch, right now if you're watching NFL or you're watching all these different things, really even watching the best teams that are still playing football, they have just a ton of concepts, but they run them out of 1,000 motions and 100 formations with a couple different route adjusts. But boot is boot. Whether you call it waggle or you call it boot, it's been around for 1,000 years. So don't think you've got to reinvent the wheel there. Just try to work on what are some things we can do to match our personnel.
Absolutely. Well, awesome, guys. Well, Coach Maddox, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I love it anytime I can talk to the top guys in the area and the more I get to podcast, seems like the more of you guys are coming out of the woodwork to come let us pick your brains. So thank you so very much. One last time, if you'll pitch your book series to us. I know you said you redid the headsets to helmet. What other ones are in that series that guys should go out and get?
Yeah, there's 3 other ones. We've got Adapt or Die, What is Open, and Capology in terms of book materials. And then we've got online courses and then VR training modules that we have. That's all on the website, r4footballsystem.com.
Are you still doing the clinics at all? Anything locally, camps or clinics?
Yeah, we'll have an R4 camp at Union High School in the first weekend in June. And again, all that information's on the website as well.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Coach Simpson, I know you've got some stuff coming out, right? So what's your most recent releases that guys need to go look for?
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff going out. We got to get Dub in the Offensive Coordinator Academy. That's going strong now. There's about 600 guys now that have gone through that, and we're continuing to add content. So offensivecoordinatoracademy.com. Get a defense. We have the Head Coach Academy that's brand new. Excited about that one. And so if you're listening to this, it's been out probably about a month. Really, really good stuff. We brought in a lot of really good coaches in that. Excited about that. Of course, you can buy my hat that has the whistle on it. I'm down to about half a garage full, so we're kind of slowly moving that. That's coachescap.com.
I want to mention real quick again, Athletic Speed and Movement, on website where you can go and get Del Basquette. The guy's been doing it for 45 years, every level, NFL, D1 colleges. When I do my head coaching thing, I put all his schools in there, and it's like it just fills up a whole sheet. He's been so many places and done so much good for kids. So if you need to help any of your guys get faster, O-line, receivers, quarterback, whatever it is, and it isn't linear speed. I'm talking football speed, cuts between the tackle, all the things where we say, that guy doesn't have football speed. He's just fast on a track. Well, you can change that for your kids over at athleticspeedmovement.com. Sweet, guys. Social media, Coach Maddox, where can we find you on social media, man, if we want to reach out and ask a question?
Yeah, Twitter's probably the best. X at Coach Dub Maddox is my handle, and that would be the best place to give me a shout, or if you need anything, hit me up there.
Awesome. And I'm at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter, and you can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Kenny, where can we find you at, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter and FBCoachSimpson.com if you want to get a book or anything else that's on there.
Awesome. The podcast is on Twitter/X at Coaching101pod. We want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you always know when the new episodes come out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.